CSX Railroad is being sued by 10 families. They accuse the company of negligence, resulting in a surge of water heading toward town.
Now, if all this sounds familiar, it's because our chief investigative reporter, Jeremy Finley, has been uncovering these details since last August.
Jeremy, your reporting is cited in this lawsuit.
It is, Tracy. It cites how we used a drone to show exactly where the surge of water came from. Now, this lawsuit claims CSX Railroad not only failed to clear debris that caused that backup, but that they knew the water was rising behind their raised tracks and failed to warn the town.
Everything was taken from her.
Since the flood last August, Michelle Feliciano is haunted by her 7-year-old daughter's final words.
I constantly remember hearing my daughter's last call out for me, and I couldn't get her.
Feliciano joined 9 other families in announcing they're now suing CSX Railroad and a landowner, saying the surge of water that killed their loved ones wasn't an act of nature.
This was a man-made tidal wave. That's right, man-made tidal wave that came into this town, changing the lives of everyone forever.
The lawsuit follows a series of News 4 investigations where drone footage revealed how water burst through raised earth after building up behind CSX railroad tracks, acting as a kind of levee. Now, this lawsuit claims the railroad failed to clear debris from their culvert at Trace Creek, essentially clogging the creek and backing up behind their tracks. And when the water burst through, sent a torrent of water rushing into the town.
We do believe that there was negligence, and we do believe that this was preventable.
In a statement to News 4 Investigates, CSX Railroad wrote in part, CSX track and related infrastructure is maintained and regularly inspected in accordance with CSX policies. But this isn't the only time CSX has been criticized for creating flooding. In New York State, you can see the debris that's washed up behind a CSX bridge, prompting criticism from state officials that it's partly to blame for flooding in that region. Back in Waverly, the lawsuit seeks $450 million in damages.
It's about justice. That's what we're really seeking here, is justice.
We also attempted to reach James and Sherry Huey, landowners who are also being sued, accused of allowing CSX to keep debris on their land that helped to clog the culvert that day. But we were unable to reach them by our deadline. Tracy?
On the day the head of FEMA towards flood-ravaged Waverly, WSMV4 Investigates has uncovered a potential flooding threat once again outside that town. Since the day 20 people drowned, we have been investigating why residents describe a surge of water from Trace Creek that they believed caused the deaths. That's why our chief investigative reporter, Jeremy Finley, actually waded into Trace Creek to see it for himself. Jeremy is here with us tonight. So, Jeremy, what were you looking for?
Okay, so here's what we were looking for, Tracy. We wanted to see if the creek was still clogged with debris. Now, to understand why, you got to go back to 2021 and drone 4 footage that we've shown you several times, where Trace Creek backed up and flooded over the railroad tracks, ultimately breaking through raised land and surging the water towards the town. So why did that water back up? Well, a lawsuit claims that CSX Railroad failed to clear the culvert of debris before the flood. So we returned to the creek and that culvert, and what we found has flood victims worried that another deadly flood could easily happen again. What Jessica Mallard saw when she opened the back door,
it was crazy how quick the water just started coming out of nowhere,
was nearly as scary as seeing floodwaters halfway up the windows of Eastbrook Animal Clinic last August.
It was terrifying because it was so high outside. I'm like, if any of these windows break, like it's just gonna suck in here and I don't know what I'm gonna do.
The clinic is just down Highway 70 from Trace Creek. When the surge of water broke through, it was directly in the water's path.
I cried for a long time. It's hard not to.
So when WSMV4 Investigates showed the clinic staff what we found in the creek, this was their reaction.
It's terrible. Like, it's gonna happen again if they don't get that out.
All right, I'll drop it in the water.
I took our cameras into the creek.
Okay, I'll be right back.
Where the water runs underneath a railroad culvert. It's right here that a class action lawsuit claims CSX Railroad allowed various debris to clog its culverts, creating significant blockage to the flow of Trace Creek. New photos obtained by WSMV4 Investigates from the day of the flood shows the water pooled behind the railroad with Highway 70 on the other side. This is before it broke through. This is after. The water washing over the highway and heading towards town, almost like a levee break. All that damage, again, blamed on a clogged culvert. So when we returned to the creek this month, roughly 100 yards from the culvert, this is what we found. A mountain of debris on the creek bed, including a massive tire and a pile of limbs, trunks, and branches. People living downstream worry if there's another heavy rain, all this will be washed once more to clog the culvert.
If you get one tree washed, crossways of that, we're done. It builds up again.
And there's more. The creek is full of rock and gravel, and it's now piled up underneath the culvert. You can see it's cleared here, but look right next to it. Much of the opening is now covered by it, limiting how much water could pass through. It's piled so high that I can stand on top of it and touch the culvert.
You can't leave that in the creeks like that.
Today, we took all of this to the top administrator of FEMA. We went back in the creek and we found that there is a good amount of debris still in that creek. Is that a solution to preventing flooding, is going through these creeks and dredging them out?
You know, I don't know the specifics on the creeks here. I would have to defer to your state and local officials to give you a better answer on what the specifics of the nature of the problem is here.
So we did just that and asked the director of the State Department of Emergency Management. So the concern is that if we get another rain, that's just going to push all that debris up into there.
The creek needs to be cleaned out, right? So there are places where it's clean, where homeowners, where it has easier access. We'll take a look at how we organize that and help the community get Trace Creek cleaned out.
After water rushed through and destroyed Waverly Elementary and High School.
The room that we're in, it's not that big and it's okay.
Jaylee Prince was one of 1,100 students and staff moved to other schools nearby. A makeshift solution.
I want it yesterday, just like everybody else in society now.
Director of Schools Richard Rye wants to do away with. But the county isn't rebuilding here.
We lost 3 students. It's not worth any of that. This right here, of course, is on high enough ground. He's on the ground.
He plans to temporarily move the 2 schools up here at what used to be
the Acme Boot. They employed a lot of people in this county for years.
This long brick building will house 69 elementary and junior high classrooms.
Cafeteria, a playroom on the back, and another smaller playroom in this corner right here.
The plan is for the back side of the boot factory to become the front side of the school. Right here will be the student drop-off, and down the way will be the school's offices. This building comes with challenges, like a leaky roof and limited windows. Supply chain shortages also pose a problem. But Rye says he wants to finish this temporary school soon.
Right there when school starts in August. So we're looking at the second week of August. So it's going to be tough, and I know that, but that's still our goal.
I'm kind of excited about it.
It may not be a permanent solution.
We've never been in a school together because we're 5 years apart, and it's going to be exciting because we'll be always together.
But for Jaylee and Dallas Prince, it's a step in the right direction. In Waverly, Marissa Sulek, News 4 Nashville.
Issues with federal funding weren't the only ones facing flooding victims.
Many also wondered what happened to the millions of dollars raised by fundraisers and charities in the weeks and months following that deadly flooding. Lindsey Bramson followed the money.
Megan Swack can barely talk about it.
It's very hard. I'm sorry.
While her home near Waverly was untouched by the deadly flood, she can't help but think what happened to all that donated money her friends could really use.
It makes me very mad because you have all these families who, like I said, are at a stopping point or have lost everything and they have nothing to start with.
A concern repeated on social media over and over again.
There's so many people in need that need stuff now.
News 4 Investigates found out some organizations are still holding on to money, a lot of it. One of those is the Community Foundation. Since August, the nonprofit has raised more than $3 million. But so far, flood victims have only seen a small percentage of that. And we found out there's still more than $2.6 million available.
People are frustrated.
I know.
Who live there. Do you understand?
Oh, 100%.
Why they are?
Yes, 100%.
Executive Director Amy Fair says the foundation's entire purpose is long-term recovery, doling out money to nonprofits and charities to help people rebuild their lives.
If we gave everything all at once, there's still going to be a need later on.
I think if they have money, they need to distribute to the people that really need it.
And that's exactly what the United Way says it's doing.
100% of money coming in is going out for the flood survivors and helping them recover.
The United Way of Humphreys County has received almost $3 million in donations, and the organization still has more than $1 million left, all of which goes to victims, providing the average family $1,800 each. Take people like Annetta Sykes. This is her house after the flood. Sykes received $1,250 from the United Way, but only $500 from the Red Cross.
How fast did you go through that $500?
Oh, well, yeah, it didn't last long.
And that's just a drop in the bucket compared to the $1.6 million in donations the Red Cross received.
Do you see how somebody out there hears that and says, I don't understand why we're not getting more money?
Yeah. I can understand why they would feel that way because they have a need.
The organization says they've spent all of that and more for a total of $1.9 million to provide housing, meals, and gas. It also pays salaries for the staff. We asked for the breakdown, and check this out. Only about half the money raised went to things like hotel rooms, medical needs, and financial assistance.
I think it's wrong. I think it's very wrong. We have so many flat areas now where homes are gone, and they need it now. Quit holding on to it.
Nearly 6 months now since the Humphreys County flooding disaster. Today, we go back to Waverly to see the progress made and the need that's still in that community. News 4's Ryan Breslin is sharing the efforts there.
Loading new flooring through her front door, help is still here for Gretchen Turner.
You know, I see things constantly that need to be done at the house.
After floodwaters rose in Waverly, so much had to be tossed.
They took out our ductwork, our original hardwood floors, our cabinets, everything ended up on the front lawn.
Her home and the devastation around the town she's lived in since she was 10, a constant reminder of that August day.
I couldn't think about anything except what we had been through and what we were going through. Here I am 5 months later still getting emotional about this stuff.
A lot of passion and some contention at a highly anticipated town hall here in Waverly as those devastated by last year's flood came here for answers, but made it clear they didn't hear much of what they wanted.
Quit telling us, oh, we got to do. No, we want to know what's being done. That's all I'm asking. Who's helping me?
Raw emotion from a packed meeting full of people impacted by the catastrophic Waverly flood 8 months ago that killed 20 people and destroyed hundreds of homes.
I walk around when it rains and it floods me and it scares me.
They'd come for answers about what's being done to fix the town's flooding issues.
I don't want $1 million. I don't want a penny. I just want somebody to take responsibility for this and tell me they're sorry.
When the schools in this town were flooded out last year, they had hoped to revamp this old boot factory into a place where students could come to and start the fall semester. But instead, take a look. You can see that there are still mounds of dirt. The plumbing isn't finished here. The walls are still boarded up. This place will not be ready for students. The head of FEMA, Deanne Criswell, took a tour of the building and learned that they hope to have this factory revamped and ready to go by December for students. Until then, students will continue to go to other schools in the county.
5 families who lost everything last year got keys to their new homes.
WSMV's Michael Ward was there as they took on a new beginning.
While no one here can forget that morning almost a year ago, seeing their new home standing is what some of these survivors say they need it to feel like they can finally move past that disaster.
It's
better than I could have hoped.
There's good reason Gary Jackson is breathing a sigh of relief.
Yeah.
Nearly 1 year ago, he faced death in the Waverly flood. He was without a home.
This one here that Gary's going to move into.
Until today.
Feels like I finally made it back to where I wanted to be. So it feels pretty good.
Faith-based ministry Appalachia Service Project handed house keys to 5 families whose lives were turned upside down last August.
After natural disaster, rescue crews go house to house, accounting for the people inside. 2 devastatingly young lives were claimed inside this home in the Waverly flood. We spoke to 7-month-old Ryan and Riley's parents 1 year later. On Washington Avenue in Waverly, Tennessee, the only place left to sit is the stoop.
It brings back a lot of flashbacks.
This unit provided Danielle Hall and Matthew Rigney's shelter a mere 15 days.
We just lost it all.
Before a flood washed everything away.
That's what I got woke up to, was Danielle screaming, "We got to go." And it was to the porch line.
When they woke up the morning of August 21st, 2021, they were already out of time.
Before we got all the kids together and tried to make it out, my car was floating away.
This is the window that I came out, and when I came out, the water was about right here.
Inside, Matthew clung to their 4 children.
I thought we was about to die, all of us. Next thing you know, when I was holding them, the door busted down. And water just everywhere you turn, through the windows, through the hallway, it was filling up with water.
What Matthew describes as a tidal wave through their home broke his grip, ripping all 4 of his children from his arms. Only 2 came back up. It's been 1 year since this family lost infant twins, Riley and Ryan.
They should be learning to walk right about now.
Today they would have been 1.5 years old.
Danielle, Matthew, and their daughters relive August 21st.
Every day. Literally every day. They ask about Bub and Sissy all the time. They know that they're in heaven. They know that they're safe.
Despite their lingering grief,
living day by day,
they visit this stoop often.
It brings peace, like we're close with the twins.
Before they head back to their new home.
That GoFundMe money, it bought us a house in Camden.
Wrapped in shelter once again.
Even though they're not here, they blessed us. They found a way to make sure that we was okay.
Yeah. Rebecca Cardenas, WSMV 4.
It was at one time a pretty place.
When Darlene Tonguette looks at what was her garden,
all back through there I had butterfly bushes and tropical plants.
A flood of memories hits her.
It was a nice backyard. Worked hard on it.
This was the home she raised her family, including her daughter, Amanda Maples. Now both their homes are boarded up. Caution tape sticks to the front door.
My mama being rescued.
The site of a dramatic jet ski rescue they don't want to return to.
After 3 floods, I'm tired. I was so tired. I didn't want to rebuild, redo anything. I was ready to move on. I asked my grandsons, I said, how would you feel living with your grandparents again?
While they moved up the hill to higher, safer ground in this new home, that doesn't mean others are.
Not nearly anybody's fault. It's just the lack of conversation that we need to have.
It's also why Amanda joined the coalition Flood Ready Tennessee. She says there's a whole list the state and Humphreys County must make to ensure this doesn't happen again.
Could cleaning the creeks out help? Sure. Could widening culverts? Sure. Could making water sheds happen? Sure. Could making areas just a non-building area help? Absolutely.
Right now, the Army Corps of Engineers is writing a review of the incident. That could take up to 2 years.
I feel this area might be a part that you wouldn't see homes in.
Amanda says the review could recommend this neighborhood where she grew up becomes a green space. However, that doesn't stop developers currently building homes in the area, an idea her family wanted nothing to do with.
If I can take what's happened to us and be a voice for the people who've done so much for us, absolutely will.
In Waverly, Marissa Sulik, WSMV 4.
The Waverly Tigers called themselves Road Warriors last season, playing every game following the flood on the road. But tonight, for the first time in nearly 1 year, the Tigers will play a home football game in their own stadium. On August 21st, 2021, A devastating flood left much of Waverly, Tennessee underwater.
It was like not real. It just felt like a movie.
Our stadium, the field was completely underwater, and the field house, we could see the water was pretty high on the field house, so we knew it was underwater.
The damage left hundreds without a place to call home, including the Waverly Central High School Tigers.
I thought we were done for sure. I didn't think there was a way for us to play anybody at that point. I mean, we had nothing really.
No locker room, no equipment, no uniforms, and no field. But still, the Tigers played.
We played every game on the road last year.
Despite the circumstances, Waverly finished the season 9-3. But a winning record wasn't why head coach Randall Bolden encouraged the season to go on. He did it for the community.
He obviously cares about the season, but he cares about the people more. And he wanted us to give them something to have hope about because we didn't have much hope.
The Tigers played 11 games on the road, many of them over an hour away from the school. But the group never faltered.
I don't think there's anything you can throw at this program that they're not going to be able to rebound from. Living out of our cars, so to speak, with all of our gear in our cars, transferring back and forth to wherever we're practicing. And our kids never griped, never complained, they just carried on their mission.
But on Friday, that journey comes to an end. After exactly 364 days, the Tigers will play a home football game.
Obviously, it's special to us as coaches and players, but I think it's going to mean a lot more to the community. Just having some normalcy back. This is another year. We're trying to put the flood behind us and keep rebuilding from it. Just being able to come home in our stadium and watch us play is going to be special.
I'll be more emotional than probably anybody. We've just been through so much, so we're just ready.
Ready to make Ray Hampton Stadium home again.
We still have same heart, same Waverly mentality.
So much excitement Friday night as the Waverly Tigers took on the Camden Lions. For this home team, playing on their home turf for the first time since the Waverly deadly floods was a game changer.
Welcome home!
Home field is where the heart is for these Waverly football fans. Running through the hole on the Tigers' home turf is something the Waverly High School football team has waited for since their high school was damaged during the deadly floods last August.
This weekend marks 1 year since the deadly flooding in Waverly. Homes were destroyed and lives were lost, but tonight those lives are being honored. Our Sharon Dankwa spent her evening at the city's courthouse talking to community members and state leaders at a candlelight vigil.
Seeing people standing on the top of their roofs screaming for help, and there was nothing I could do.
Homes destroyed and more than 20 lives lost. Lives a year later, city leaders are determined to honor and remember with a candlelit vigil.
They deserve to be remembered. They deserve to be honored in the way that we don't forget.
David Bird lost his house, neighbors, and friends, but today he says he's giving thanks.
To be part of the community of what we went through, and the lives that were lost, and how the people have come together and rebuilt, and the love that's been shown.
And David isn't alone. Pinky says the vigil is a time to spread love and comfort after the unthinkable.
I needed to be here and let them know that I'm here for them.
And while they heal and rebuild, Governor Bill Lee says the city's recovery is an inspiration to the whole state.
People that were strong, people that were committed to one another, and they watched neighbors and friends from around the state and some from around the country come together and descend on this town.
An inspirational story Pinky says isn't over just yet.
We're coming back. Full force, we're coming back.
Walk into Waverly Central High School. A place last year's flood still lingers. Not physically, but mentally.
This year's a little bit better. Last year was rough.
Jennifer Reed owns the Waverly Cafe. She's also mom of two in the Humphreys County school system, one that condensed schools again this year after both Waverly Elementary and Junior High School were flooded.
So you had junior high in with high school, and it was a lot. Everybody's on top of each other.
I'm not one to make excuses by any means.
Director of Schools Richard Rye says shuffling students impacts them academically. That's why this year Humphreys County Schools was rated in need of improvement. It's part of the state's district accountability study released this week, a rating the county hasn't seen recently.
When you take two of our largest facilities
and have to absorb them in our current buildings, it affects that learning environment.
Rye says it's going to take a lot of time and work to improve those student test scores. First, he says he has to get both the elementary and the middle school into this temporary school. Then he says they need to implement some after-school tutoring and programs.
Rye says the rating also reflects what students experience outside of school.
We were still trying to, deal with a lot of mental health issues. Our community was still healing as a whole.
The school system has a social emotional learning liaison. Right now, Rye says she has 180 referrals.
You've got a lot of students there that their mind is not on that test. They've got other, home issues that really affect their whole daily life.
He says they will hire another one because this past year, life in school still doesn't look the same.
They're overwhelmed and they're trying.
In Waverly, Marissa Sulek, WSMV 4.